Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1096 of our daily content grind, and today I would like to thank some upset Twitter trolls for actually inspiring the topic of the video. I have been inundated with comments in my Twitter feed over people very upset over my claims that toy guns are illegal to sell in America, which they are. You know, that's how that works. They have to be unrealistic, either in color or shape, and usually both. Otherwise, big retailers won't take them. That's why the only realistic toy guns you'll find are in dollar stores, where it's probably not the only dubiously legal thing they're selling. Point being, we've been over that topic, and frankly, I'm exhausted by it. But apparently, the big thing about that topic is it's about accuracy. Studio Series is a toy line that is all about screen accuracy, and if you can't make it screen accurate, you shouldn't bother doing it. Do it right or don't do it at all. The argument right now is literally, don't have any Megatron in Studio Series if he's not going to be a gun. Because if it's not accurate, what's the point of it being in Studio Series? Let's test that, shall we? We're going to be going through as many examples as I could find, and I know they are not the only examples, of just how inaccurate Studio Series can be. A toy line that strives for accuracy, but for various reasons can't always get there. For instance, we know that the Rise of the Beast toy line, for the most part, everything in Studio Series is at least somewhat inaccurate. You know, that's just the nature of the beast. You'll excuse the pun. Because they were working with what was being developed at the time, which was not the final designs for these characters. So colors are off, details are off, few shapes are off here and there. Sometimes there's no avoiding that. Mirage, for instance, yeah, he looks a lot more like his concept art than he does his final toy. They made a head swap at the last minute to fix that, but the head is still mostly painted, is mostly unpainted gray rather than painted blue. And he does suffer from some extra kibble issues due to Porsche having certain requirements for the toy. Examples like that get a little bit iffy. Like, okay, there's requirements there. But I'm not necessarily blaming them for being inaccurate because the designs changed at the last minute, but it does weigh into this example. And then there's things like Noah, who, of course, not only is the design of the armor not entirely accurate to how he looked in the movie, but of course there was no vehicle mode for his armor in the movie. I'm also very questionable over the fact that the vehicle mode is a jet, if you call that a jet, considering considering his armor is made of car parts. You know, at least Jetfire had the decency to turn into a jet before he became a jetpack. But Rise of the Beast is just a convenient example. Like I said, a lot of the stuff is based on preliminary designs, concepts that were still being worked on, so it's not entirely accurate. We can expand beyond this. We have the Studio Series Bumblebee Optimus Prime that was released after the movie, and this one is not the Freightliner that we saw him depicted in at the end of the Bumblebee movie. This is more based on a Merriman cab-over truck, rather than what was screen accurate in the film. Robot mode looks fine, I mean, it overall looks fine, but if we are being technical about this, that isn't the correct vehicle mode. And as I was going through, I discovered that this is a pretty common thing for Studio Series to do. Generally, this is because licensing isn't available, or it's just plain cheaper to make something that is kinda sorta looks like it, but isn't quite the copyrighted vehicle. So we can continue with that. Sideways, for instance. Number one, the weapon is also not accurate to what he used in the movie. It's accurate to what he used in the video game. But also, he's not an Audi R8. This is a completely different vehicle mode. Again, similar, it hits the same note, but we admit it is not the vehicle he is supposed to be. It's completely invented. If we're also being technical, the silver paint on the head is way overdone, leaving out all the black details that the CGI render from the movie also included. So there's another added inaccuracy. So there's a whole bunch to Sideways that just does not add up to what he looked like in the movie. Granted, this one was pretty late. This is like newer studio series compared to a lot of stuff, so this is probably just a case of they were trying to get the right licensing, couldn't do it, and then just did the best they could instead. Here's another close but not quite. Shatter has a fantastic deluxe toy when it turns into a jet, but the jet in the movie was a Harrier, and I love a good Harrier jet. Unfortunately, that is not a Harrier. That is a Yak 38 pretending to be a Harrier. Again, like a lot of Hasbro's alt modes, it is adapted from a real-world vehicle. There are traces and details that do match an existing vehicle, but it has been altered and modified in order to try and be as free from copyright restriction as possible. So it's a weird amalgamation, but it's also not accurate to how she appeared in the movie. That ain't her vehicle mode. She's also not the only jet to do that. Hello, Blitzwing. I could go on and on about how this isn't even Blitzwing. Not because he's not a triple changer, not the right colors, but also because he looks like Starscream wearing a gas mask. But we can also just focus on the jet mode, which is described as a Cybertronian jet, which is, at least on packaging, it's not. It's a generic Earth jet. The one in the movie is a McDonnell Douglas F4 Phantom II. That's a heck of a name. Doing the research for this, I found out the names for some of these vehicles are absolutely insane, by the way. This is another case of, well, the character barely appeared in the movie, so we can get away with just flubbing the vehicle mode, right? We can just make it look however we want. It doesn't have to be a license, but then again, that's not his alt mode. Same goes for Mohawk. I will give this one a little bit of credit because it is... it's core class size. It's a very small figure, so getting this thing to transform into a movie accurate robot and still transform into something that looks like the real world vehicle, that is going to provide a little bit more of a challenge than the $10 budget of these toys would give it. But he is not a Confederate Motorcycles 2016 P-51 combat fighter. He's just a nice looking chopper is what he is. So that one also plays a huge factor in this. So, again, that ain't his vehicle. It ain't his vehicle. So, these are like close but not quite. But we can go further. There are more egregious examples of this particular trope. The World War II mold. This one got used for both Hot Rod and Bumblebee, and neither one is correct. So, this is a Humber light reconnaissance car. That is not the car that Hot Rod used in the movie. You'll excuse me if I get the pronunciation of this wrong, because this one is one of the trickier names. It's supposed to be a Steyr Daimler Puck 2000 truck. Needless to say, not even remotely close to what he was in the movie. Now, this is because he's a retool of the Bumblebee. Okay, so he's just going off of what Bumblebee's vehicle mode was, right? Well, in production art, in like concept art for the movie, he actually was the light reconnaissance car. However, the actual original, which actually no, I'm getting ahead of myself. He's not a light reconnaissance car. In the original concept art, he's a Humber Scout car. Same company, different model of vehicle. And neither one of those actually matters because in the movie, he's a Mercedes-Benz. So this toy is actually inaccurate on two different levels. It's not accurate to the movie and it's not accurate to his design art, which means this one is 100% made up. Also, the toy was absolutely terrible, so I don't really give anyone any kind of grief over not counting this one for accuracy, because I don't think a lot of people cared. But as long as we're going for vehicles with a more military flair, Grindor. This one is pretty typical. Grindor is always just the light gray repaint of Blackout, so that's not necessarily a big surprise, right? So that one, okay, fine. It's the same robot mode, whatever. We know it's a reused model from the first movie for the second movie. No real surprise here. That said, in the movie, he is supposed to be a CH-53E Super Stallion. The toy is based on Blackout's vehicle mode, which is an MH-53 Pavlo helicopter. Again, this is probably splitting hairs. This is probably being a little bit pedantic about this, but you know what? I'm going with what I see. It's not the accurate vehicle mode for the character. It's just a cheap repaint is what it is. Cheap repaint with a new pet included. A pet that is not associated with him whatsoever, but hey, let's ignore that part. But that Ravage does remind me, we need to talk about Soundwave as well. Soundwave's satellite mode is radically off-model from what it looks like in the movie. Now, this one is generally a big mess of a toy in general. It doesn't look great no matter what you do to it. But yeah, the panels on this one are way, way too small. And yeah, of course, it's not nearly the size it should be. And then, of course, the robot mode is also odd. Now, granted, he didn't have an on-screen robot mode in Revenge of the Fallen, but in all fiction depicting Revenge of the Fallen Soundwave, he is using his original toy as a basis. And while there's little notes of that toy in the robot mode, it is, for the most part, entirely made up and actually much closer to what he looked like in Dark of the Moon in order to try and create a little bit of synergy between the two toys. I don't think it particularly works because I would rather have the accuracy. And even if he doesn't appear in a robot mode in the movie, he does have an established robot mode they completely ignored. So I find both halves of this toy completely inaccurate. There are a few other examples. We can be very nitpicky if we really wanted to, and we can do some nitpicky stuff. For instance, Shadow Raider. So Shadow Raider is just another one of those generic kind of characters. Like, it's supposed to represent like the other like stingers that came in a bunch of no, I'm mistaken. This is actually, like, I believe this is Lockdown's troops. Now that I think about it, I'm getting my generics mixed up. The point being, it is not an accurate depiction of the character. It's a retool of Lockdown, which, okay, fine, but the chest detailing is wrong. It should be showing more green, and the character was never depicted as orange in the movie. It's always all gray. They picked orange because that was the default color in the stock photos for the official vehicle, which, okay, fine. If you're going for something that car enthusiasts would be interested in, fine, then go with his official coloring. But point being, that ain't how he looked in the movie. That's the point of this, is that Studio Series has to be accurate. Well, the orange ain't accurate. It just isn't. If this was a gray, I wouldn't put it on this list. My personal grievance has always been the Bumblebee run of Bumblebees because, frankly, all of them are based on the Michael Bay version of Bumblebee, rather than the one that was actually in the movie. Again, this is similar to Rise of the Beast, where preliminary designs did call it to be much closer to the familiar design, because at some point in development, this was supposed to be a prequel to the live-action Bay movies. That said, ultimately, the final toy just kind of looks like a standard movie Bumblebee wearing a Volkswagen Beetle shell. He doesn't even have the ability to fold the wings back and hide them the way they were always hidden in the movie. I still want Hasbro to actually fix this, to give us that more rounded, solid yellow Bumblebee without the door wings that we saw in the movie. And I feel like this is a perfect way for Studio Series to go back and redo what I feel is a past mistake. The only problem is they probably don't have the Volkswagen license mold anymore, as evidenced by the recent 86 Bumblebee. But one can hope they come back to it someday. And we can be even more nitpicky about this. I mean, like, B127 here is a retool of the off-road Bumblebee, the Jeep, which is actually a good toy, but it didn't translate well to the remold, especially if you are a stickler for accuracy, because the thighs and the forearms of this toy are completely wrong for the movie. I admit, that's as nitpicky as it gets. Like, I'm now, like, picking apart, oh, the thighs are wrong. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll go with something that was far more screen inaccurate for the next example. Like the fact that this one never even exists! This is my favorite one whenever someone argues Studio Series needs to be accurate. Do you realize that there is a numbered edition in this toy line that literally they just invented? Like, there is no Thundercracker in any movie or even any comic novelization, nothing. There is no official depiction a Thundercracker as a retool of Nitro Zeus. It's always based on the 2007 Starscream. Or when the Bumblebee movie came around, that particular, like, Cybertronian jet mode. Point being, this is not a special release. This is not like a weird, like, offshoot, like, Buzzworthy is. This was a Toys R Us exclusive. It is an officially numbered Studio Series release. It's even an early one. It's like '09 or something. So this is even more absurd to me. Like, it's like going back to the way they did normal movie toy lines, like for the first 3 movies, where they just remold a character, slap a new head on, and go, yeah, that's a new character. Like, yeah, that's a brand new toy, just to fill out the line. It's crazy to me. So yeah, like if you want totally inaccurate, you don't get more inaccurate than didn't exist. But I know what you're saying. I've had this argument thrown at me too. That's Bayverse crap. No. I mean real Transformers. Since we're talking about, a Megatron here, an 86 release that are supposed to be dead accurate to what they looked like in the movie. Oh, no. Those are the only ones that really count. Okay? Let's venture to other places, like the Gamer Edition, because the Megatron isn't based on how he looks in the game. It's based on his original concept art. This one is so baffling, because this is a 10-year-old design, and they still based it on, even older than that, actually. It's like a 14-year-old design at this point, but even then, they still went with the production art rather than the final product, as if it was like a toy design with a movie about to come out, which is absurd to me. This had no reason to be inaccurate, and yet it is. It's also not a great toy, by the way, just to point that out. This extends to Barricade as well. I believe he is using an inaccurate weapon that is way too small, if I remember my notes correctly. And, of course, the final version of this character had a lot more gray than black. I'm presuming the toy adds the black in to connect him a little bit more to, like, more traditional Barricade appearances. Point being, not accurate. Not how he's supposed to look. But I know. We're gonna get into Studio Series 86 because that's where the crux of this apparently lies, right? Well, we do have a few examples where even those are not entirely accurate. Ratchet, for instance. It's a small detail, admittedly. Vehicle and robot-wise, yeah, like he's about as accurate as you're going to expect. But of course, he's not using the red cross on his shoulders because that's what he used in the movie, but they're not using that here. Oh, but TJ, they can't use the red cross because legally they're not allowed to use that design. What about Starscream? And this one is one I get a lot of looks and glances for because I do really like the Earthrise Starscream design, but I will go with the idea that it really doesn't fit in with the rest of Studio Series 86 because it retains all that heavy tech greeble that Earthrise really like to add to its toys rather than being the cleaner, more cartoon accurate design that you would expect out of brand new toys for the line. So I will give you that. That part is definitely inaccurate. While we're at it, he also didn't have a throne in the movie. I believe the coronation scene features one, but he never sat down in it, and to my knowledge, this is based closer on how Megatron's chair in the first episode was based, rather than an actual throne. Admittedly, memory's a little bit fuzzy, haven't looked into that recently, so point being, he didn't have a throne. Yeah, inaccurate. Oh, but it's about the alt mode, right? It's about the alt mode, because they completely changed the alt mode, right? Okay, fine. Why does Perceptor have a tank mode? Now, I know what you're saying. Oh, but the original toy Perceptor had a tank mode, right? This super awkward, mortar tank thing. Well, yes, but he didn't have one in the movie. He didn't have one on screen. This never appeared, so why are you giving it to the toy? It shouldn't be in there at all. Shouldn't all of your focus be on making the microscope mode look as good as possible? Why include a tank mode that he never had in the movie? That's inaccurate. It also does mean that there are certain elements of the tank that do exist in the robot mode, which makes that inaccurate as well, like the molded-in tank treads on the sides of his legs. So yes, that is still extending the inaccuracies. And then there's this thing. I think we should stop trying to make the exosuit a thing. Because there's no way, even if we try to get it screen accurate, it's still just going to look pretty awful. So can we just, like, give up on that now and just, like, we got the core class one, good enough, let's leave it at that. And I'm going to leave it that here. So, for the most part, I'm really just proving that Studio Series is not a toy line solely dedicated to accuracy. And just because it's not accurate to what you want the original what the new toy or character to be, does not mean that it doesn't need or deserve to be in the line. Studio Series tries for accuracy, but there are legal limitations, there are copyright limitations, and in all cases prior to this, they have abided by those, as exampled by the last 20 minutes. Now, if you disagree, that's fine, but don't come to me starting an argument over it. That's all I ask, because you're not going to get what you want out of it. Point being, if you want to be upset over accuracy, have at it, because the line ain't accurate. All I'm saying today. So, that's it. That's the stance. Thank you everyone for watching. I will see you next time.